This is the Grind to Greatness podcast, your dose of unapologetic tough love. These are your hosts, Mary Hodges and Ashley Kane.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Grind to Greatness podcast. I am Ashley Kane, and I'm here with my co-host, Mary Hodges. We have all kinds of fun stuff to talk about today. This is actually really kind of a funny story that we're going to go into because this is like our episode 5.2 kind of thing. So we're going to talk all about multitasking and why you suck at it.
Yeah, and the funny part about this episode is that a couple days ago, we recorded the episode. We had all these awesome points, which you will hear later about multitasking, why you're actually not good at it and why you should stop doing it and why there's just a myth around it. And, you know, when we got done with the episode, we had all this amazing advice for you guys to not multitask and all this other stuff. When we got done with the episode, her and I, and we're new to this. This is our first podcast. We were both like, that was a really good episode. We both really felt like we were just flowing, like the conversation was good. Like we were just ourselves, you know? And so we're talking about it as I'm like exporting the files and doing all this stuff. And whatever happened, I lost the episode. I lost it. I lost the entire recording because I was multitasking while I was trying to, you know, export the file. And I really don't even know what happened. We were just kind of like, oh, man. But I was like, look, this is actually going to make for a really good story because, you know, we have to practice what we preach too, right? Now, when we are done recording episodes, I'm going to be laser focused to make sure that, you know, when I'm downloading the MP3 file, that I don't lose it. So that's kind of our funny story. And we will take it away with what was now the rest of our episode. Take it away, Ashley.
Yeah, Mary can't save and talk at the same time. We were gloating about how great the episode was. Basically, this kind of piggybacks off last week's episode about saying no. If you didn't tune in, you didn't listen, we talked about the power of saying no to things that did not align with our vision and saying yes to the things that do. One small part of that episode, we talked about saying no to multitasking. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about it, so now we want to take the time to expand about why you need to stop multitasking.
Really, the idea for this episode and, you know, why we wanted to piggyback off last week was because, you know, I like to put out these personal questions on my Facebook, all kinds of different questions. And so I thought I would ask, it was kind of a trick question when I asked it, but I thought I would ask, like, how many of you think you are good at multitasking? And I had tons of people respond like, me, I'm such a great multitasker. And I was, you know, thinking like, wait till you guys hear what we have to say about this. I know that there's a lot of misconception around multitasking. So I was like, okay, it's going to be, that would be a perfect way for us to piggyback off of saying no episode and just expanding more on why multitasking is not in your best interest. Because really the myth around it is that multitasking, you're really just task switching, okay? Because your brain can only focus clearly on one thing at a time. Hence why I wasn't able to accurately download our audio while Ashley and I were just raving about how awesome our episode was. And the opposite of that is focus, right? Focus on one course until successful. So we're going to jump into some reasons why multitasking does not serve you.
The first point that we want to make is that you never fully get in the zone for one activity. If you start a task or a project and say you get interrupted, it takes 23 minutes supposedly to get back into the zone. That's the point of going to the task switching idea is you're starting one project, you're starting another project instead of just kind of going with one, finishing it, and then going to the next one, you'll be way more productive.
Also, task switching sucks your energy, okay? So every time you have to go back and forth between tasks, your brain is expending energy. And that kind of brings us to an interesting point on willpower, which we talked about in episode 2, and how you have a limited resources of willpower. And when you're working on two different things, you're actually using willpower, and that's why your energy is being sucked if you're not just focusing on that one thing at a time.
Another point is multitasking does not save time. In fact, you're actually going to spend more time to finish 2 projects when you're jumping back and forth than it would take to finish one project separately, which I thought was super interesting and very true.
There was research done on that said drivers actually took longer to reach their destinations when they're chatting on their cell phones. And I do a lot of road trip traveling for my stepkids and their travel basketball. And I can fully attest that when people are talking on the phone and they're driving, it slows them down because they're not really, if I'm on a 2-lane highway, I'm on cruise control and I'm trying to get to my destination. Yeah. But if, you're talking on the phone and you're distracted by other things, it slows you down.
And this next one is one of my favorites. So you're going to be less productive. Experts estimate that switching between tasks, you can actually lose 40% of productivity. So just think about the time that it takes and the refocus from going back and forth between those projects.
40% is a lot of time. That is huge. Think about if you had an extra 40% of your time, what you could accomplish. Like, that is insane to me.
Half.
I know. It's just completely insane. So if you want to think about why you need to stop multitasking, that should be one of, especially in your work life, or even if you're just balancing home and work and everything else you have going on, that extra 40% in time. I'm sure some of you out there thinking like, oh, I wish there were more hours in the day. You don't necessarily need more hours in the day. You just got to be better at managing those hours. So get that 40% back and stop multitasking.
Another point too is that you make more mistakes and errors when multitasking. So, you're trying to talk and do something, or you're trying to, type out a draft or something like that, and you end up making more mistakes.
Or you lose a podcast episode.
Right. So that's a big one that I think we just realized a couple days ago.
Right. With the irony, right? The irony of that is just...
It did number 6.
Right. Yeah. And then it increases your stress, right? So, I made that mistake and was just kind of like, oh man, like, dang it. We just spent all that time recording that episode and it was really good. And now we have to redo it and we have to find time to redo it. But you know what? At the end of the day, I think us having that story of our own mistake to share with you guys is actually a great thing, And with the increased stress thing, I think of my sister when I hear that, because she works at a job where, when I hear her talk about her work, a lot of people are constantly bothering her. If you're in a place where you have a lot of coworkers, they're constantly coming by her office, asking her for stuff to find information, to look up something. She can never really fully get in her own zone. And the stress level that she experiences because of that, and feeling like she has this endless to-do task, right? That she can never really get a hold of. I can just tell in her voice where she's just like, I'd rather go work on a Saturday when there's no one there to bother me. I would get so much more stuff done, which, kind of brings us to a point. We're going to make a whole entire episode on this about throwing away your to-do list. Like I said, that's an episode in itself. But I think that being multitasking and feeling like you have so much to do and that you don't have enough time to get through it all, that's probably a huge reason why this increases stress.
Your memory also suffers. If you're trying to do 2 things at once, say read a book and watch television, I don't know who does that, but that's, you're not really going to know what's going on in the show. But sometimes I do work and watch TV, which is kind of weird because I'm like rewinding it, but I'm still trying to focus. I should probably stop doing that. Say you're going to miss the important details of one of the things that you're doing.
Yeah, I'm not good at doing 2 things at once in terms of, I know I've tried to do the same thing, like check an email and watch a TV show. And, whatever you're focused on is going, like I said, you're task switching. You're not multitasking. Whatever you're focusing on in that moment is going to be the thing that your brain is going to either, retain to its memory or what. So I know there's been times I'm like, I have no idea what just happened on that TV show because I was trying to do something else.
Well, one thing that I'll do is I admit that I'll be working on maybe one project, but trying to get 2 things done in that project at once. And what I'll do is I'll be typing on the computer, and then I'll switch to my phone, like, oh yeah, I got to get this file off my phone. It's in my email. And then all of a sudden I'll get lost in like Facebook messages. And I'm like, oh shit, what was I doing again? I was trying to get something done on my computer. So that goes back to that.
You were trying to find the end of Facebook, we call
Right.
that. How many of you, what is at the end of Facebook? That's what I want to know.
I've tried to find it. You just keep going.
All right. It would probably take a long time to get to the end. Ooh, this one's big. I'm sure people out there listening, this will be a huge eye opener. It was for me. Multitasking can cause you to overeat. So I know hearing that, some of you are going to be like, wait a minute. Being distracted during your mealtime can prevent your brain from fully processing what you've eaten, right? Because you're task switching. And I know, for one, eating fast is another one of those things, too, where it's like, oh, I'm still hungry. It's like, just wait 10 minutes. You're going to be hating yourself in 10 minutes because you're so full. But the same thing with if you're trying to eat while you watch TV or you're doing all these things at once. I know I'm guilty of that. I like stand and eat and like do a million things while I'm eating. My body doesn't really register that I'm full until much later. So yeah, that's one that people will probably want to consider reducing some multitasking because no one wants to overeat.
Yeah, I didn't even know that until like we started putting together this episode. Did you know that?
No, me neither.
One of the other things too is it kind of goes back to your memory thing. Your creativity actually suffers. So if you're an artist, you're a creator, when you're multitasking, you do what they call working memory. Using too much of that dampens your creative thinking because I guess like the stress levels are on you. And I think it's so subconscious that we don't even really realize it.
That was interesting for me too. The idea of the working memory and just the concept of task switching, where you're not allowing yourself that energy to be creative, to be innovative. So if you are in a profession where you need creativity, if you're an artist of some kind, if you have to innovate in one way or another, definitely multitasking is getting in the way of that for sure.
One thing I know we can all attest to is your relationship suffers. So, when you're having a deep conversation or even just a normal conversation with your significant other and you're like talking to them and they're on their freaking phone, that annoys the hell out of me.
Too.
So just having a cell phone near you in personal conversations, it actually signals like a subconscious trigger to them, and it can cause friction and trust issues.
Yeah, that was like a study done by the University of Essex that just said even if your cell phone's like in the vicinity while you're in a personal conversation with somebody, a meaningful conversation, that can cause those issues. And I know, to me, this one is huge because we've just become so attached to our screens and our phones that we don't stop to really have personal connection with people. I've been guilty of it before, tons of time. I know I've been on the phone with friends and looking at my computer at the same time and just kind of being like, yeah. And like, I have to step back and think about it, like, because I don't talk on the phone very often. I don't, I work a lot. So when I am talking on the phone with my friends or my family, or I'm with somebody, that person deserves for me to be present. And one thing that I have wanted to work on and be better at this year was being present. I would take my laptop with me everywhere because I felt like there was always going to be a need for me to do work of some kind. And this weekend, we went to Kansas for my stepson's basketball, and I left my laptop home. I always take it. I may not always bring it out, but I always take it. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I'm here for them. This is what I'm doing this weekend. Everything else can wait. And if worse comes to worse, my phone has pretty much every file on it that I could access it from somewhere if I had to. And I know my brother was also recently in town, and I have a big family, and I don't have a problem. I think once you get used to doing this, I don't have a problem putting my phone away and not looking at it and just being around my family, that personal connection, without needing to constantly check what the hell is happening on social media, or I don't know. I mean, I don't know what we get distracted by on the phone, but I think once you start to practice that, I think everyone is just so addicted to their phone. And, if I'm out at a restaurant with somebody, I put my phone away. I don't care. Whatever it is can wait, right? So how do you feel about that?
Well, I know that I used to annoy my parents when we would be out to eat because I would be checking my phone occasionally here and there, or I'd be texting, or I'd take a phone call and they'd be like, oh, sorry, you're texting. I'm like, I kind of felt bad. They wanted to make me feel guilty, I guess. But we were talking, I guess, before when we were talking about this topic, you mentioned that your parents were actually always on Facebook during dinner.
Well, yeah, there was one time we were out to eat and my parents are in their 60s and they're both pretty tech savvy for their age. And we were out somewhere and I'm like, I put my phone away. I was with my parents. I did not see a need for me to just be on my phone. And they're just like on their phones looking at Facebook and YouTube. And I'm like, what is wrong with this picture here? Like, why am I the only one that's not on my phone? Like, what is this? And I think that also brings us to one too about multitasking can be dangerous. If you're looking at your phone and walking, so that there was this interesting study when we were looking at like different things to talk about on this episode. I found this study that said 1 in 4 teenagers that go into the emergency room from getting hit by a car, part of the reason was because they were looking down at their phone and walking. And I know, oh my God, my stepkids, these young kids these days, I don't like to complain about the younger generation because we're the ones raising them. I always am super defensive when people say that millennials are entitled brats, because it's like, well, your parenting sucks then. So like when people complain about younger generations, what does that say about your parenting? You know what I mean? But I have noticed, and it's just because they grew up in a different time. Their phones and their screens are huge parts of their lives. And these young kids literally walk with their faces down in their screens all the time. And I'm like, I tell my stepkids, if I have to remind you one time to make sure you hold the door open for people behind you, I'm going to scream. Because it's like, not that they're like being assholes or anything. They're just not paying attention. They're looking down at their phone. So they're walking through a door. They swing the door open, walk through, face looking down at the phone, and they don't realize that somebody's behind them. And I'm just like, just pay attention to your surroundings. Yeah. This can be, they talk about that too for being dangerous for women. And, I used to live in the city of Chicago, so it's not necessarily uncommon for women to just walk around at certain parts of the city at nighttime, But if you're not aware of your surroundings, like you could come in harm's way, whether you accidentally get hit by a car because your face is looking down or you're just, not aware of what's around you. And so, parents, we got to do a better job of making sure our kids look up while they walk. And we talked in the last episode of our take one of this episode, we talked about how like wondering whether or not the human body was actually going to go through changes in the spinal cord area in the neck because we're constantly looking down.
Yeah. Well, I remember this lady who, it was like a viral video, probably maybe last year sometime. And she was walking in the mall or something like that. And she was down her phone and she tripped and she fell into the fountain. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
That one was bad. Right. So, multitasking not only affects your work, it affects your mall walking skills. It affects a lot of things. You're probably surprised to hear some of these things. The biggest one I think that we're going to close with is the fact that you just miss out on life. You miss walking around the fountain, you walk into it instead, but missing out on life. There's a thing called inattentional blindness. Okay. And they did this study of these students at a college that were like walking through their campus, like quad or wherever their like big common area was on campus. And they had a clown riding around on a unicycle, okay, all over this place. And they said 75% of the students that were walking and using their phone completely missed this clown on the unicycle. Now, I don't know if that's whether because they just didn't care because they're, 18 to 22-year-olds who are like, oh, clown on a unicycle, great. But
that's so funny, though.
But these days, if there was a clown on a unicycle in your quad, everyone is so like, ooh, I got to get this on Snapchat and social media. But 75% of the people missed it. And I think the point that we want to convey there is just to like sometimes just stop and smell the roses. I have to remind myself of this all the time too, because we're constantly just worried about our screens or, we're just not really taking in what's around us and enjoying the life that's happening or unfolding around us.
Yeah, you were saying just enjoying the warm sunshine on your face, right?
Yeah, like I went for a walk the other day and I was going to like just have my phone out to try to find the bottom of Facebook. And and I decided like, no, let me just put my phone away and observe my surroundings and see, you know, what the hell's around, like what's around me. There was a woman outside that was planting flowers and she looked really old and I was like, you go, old lady, out there planting flowers. And so I wouldn't have paid attention to that before, you know. So we're going to jump into some ways you can stop multitasking. The thing is that you're not good at it, right? So now that you know that you're not good at it, nobody is good at it, and that it's really a myth, what can you do to stop multitasking?
So obviously, the first way to be able to fix anything is to recognize. So you want to think about the ways that you're multitasking. Are you trying to watch TV and work? Are you trying to do 3 projects at once? Do you have everything going on around you at once? So just think about the ways and identify them first.
Yeah, and do that for your work life and for your personal life. So do that for like when you're at your job or whatever your career is, and then do that for your how am I multitasking and like not really making as good of a personal connection as I could.
Eliminate interruptions. So this is Mary's favorite. Turn off push notifications on your phone. We've been over this before, I think in a couple episodes actually. So turning off the Facebook notification because you don't need to know every time someone likes your picture, your Instagram notifications, your email notifications. It really does distract you. And once you turn those off, I think you'll see a huge difference in the way you just live.
Oh, yeah. And then another thing, too, I know this is one that Ashley and I both suffer with, is closing tabs. So if you're on your browser on your computer, how many tabs do you have up at one time? I am notorious for having like so many tabs up to where like the tab size actually starts to shrink and get small. And then I'm like, oh man, something's gotta happen with this. And I find that the times that I'm able to, when I decide whatever task I'm going to focus on, if I only keep open the necessary tab that I need for that, then I get so much more done and I'm way less likely to be distracted.
So another point is going to be throw away your to-do list. Focus on 3 tasks per day that you want to get done. That way it's not overwhelming. You can definitely get those things done in your life, and that will help minimize your multitasking.
We're going to do a whole entire episode on to-do list. So just try throwing it away and don't. We'll explain more about that now. Just trust us and throw it away. When you are preparing your work day or your day in general, whether that's in the morning or whether that's the night before, the week before, however you make your plans, think about what 3 things that you could accomplish today. If you accomplish those 3 things, I guarantee you your 3 doesn't sound like a lot, right? It also depends on what 3 things. I mean, if you're saying a task that takes 5 minutes, you know, we're talking about 3 like big tasks that you could accomplish. If you accomplished in your day would make you feel like you had a great day, that you experienced some success in whatever you were out to achieve. So those 3 tasks, focus on what those are. And then make appointments with yourself to do those things. So schedule them in your calendar. We talked a little bit last week about kind of scheduling your time and what the things you have to do, but actually make an appointment with yourself. Okay, at 10 o'clock, from 10 to 12, I'm going to work on this project. That will make you more likely to do it. And if you ahead of time plan out the time it's going to take, you're more than likely to stay focused on that one thing.
Yeah, when you write things down, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's pretty high, like 90 to something percent that you're actually going to do those things if you write them down. So I'm a big, huge planner person. I like to have a physical planner, or if you like to have it in your phone, however you like to do it, make that commitment to yourself. I know that's something that I'm always working on because it's been a struggle for me in the past. So that's one that I'm definitely going to continue to do.
And then to clean your workspace, having a messy workspace wherever it is that you work can cause a lot of extra stress, and it is cause for a lot of distraction. So, is your desk just filled with stacks of papers and files, or your office or your cubicle or your home office or your car? If you're in your car a lot, do you have a messy car? Where is it that you're working, and is it clean? So if you can take some time to tidy up your workspace and just put stuff away so it's not distracting you, that would help majorly with multitasking.
We're going to add some of the technology stuff that we went over with you guys. So some of the technology apps that are going to help you guys to, what is it?
It's like blocking out. So it's like, the focus apps where on your personal computer or your work computer, you can put these apps to kind of set a focus time where it doesn't let you stray away and go onto social media or go onto other sites. It'll actually block it'll block you from being able to do those things. So you just focus on one thing at a time. A lot of people have a lot of success doing those things. So when it comes to eliminating distractions, especially, we're going to include some links to those. You guys can check them out in the show notes. I know I've used Rescue Time before. I'm going to look at the one called Freedom to see how that works. I like to experiment. I love technology. You guys will learn that about me, but I like to experiment with different things and see which one works. But we'll put those for you in the show notes with the links, and you can really check them out, and that will help eliminate a lot of distraction.
That's going to be on thegrindtogreatness.com. That's the website. So there's the Life Designer Toolkit that's on there. We're going to have all the show notes for all the episodes on there. There's going to be links, like Mary said, for different stuff that we talk about, whether we're talking about a book or content that we referenced or the technology websites. Mary is awesome at finding all these innovative, productive ways to be able to get your shit done. Anything else that we wanted to talk about?
I think that's it. That's going to wrap up episode 5.2, that is. And thank you guys again for tuning in. Of course, reach out to us. You can email heythere@thegrindtogreatness.com and let us know if you have any specific topics that you want to share, or if you want us to give you a shout out, share a breakthrough that you've had from some of the things that you've learned from this episode. We'd love to mention you on our show. We are also look for different guests too and people to interview. So if you have some interesting topics to add value to, whether it's on personal development, productivity, success, we would love to hear from you. All right. Thanks, guys. We're signing out.
Peace.